Hello and welcome to this short video in which we're going to look at the recent changes to notice periods for residential properties in England. Before we begin, let me give you a quick introduction to myself so you can see how I can help you. I'm Sharon Mashin and I work with Steve. He's my husband and business partner, and we started investing in property in the early 2000s. Around 2011, as a result of Steve taking voluntary redundancy, we went on to do some professional property training, and that reignited our property investing journey. We quickly built our own portfolio. We attracted a joint venture partner to purchase even more property, and from that we created our own property management company to manage the properties we were buying. This led us on to source properties, and we've helped investors based all over the world build their property portfolios too. We now manage these properties for our clients and specialise in managing high-end HMOs across the Northwest. More recently, we've developed a training arm to our business called the Property Management Programme. Our mission is to provide the information and education property owners need to help avoid the many hazards we face in today's increasingly regulated industry, whilst at the same time helping you fulfil your dreams of becoming a successful property entrepreneur. As an example, our Landlord's Ultimate How-To Guide is a standalone resource for fellow property investors who want to have the knowledge and confidence to manage their properties for themselves, or want to understand what their managing agent should be doing on their behalf. Now, as I said, in this video we're going to have a look at changes to notice periods, and these came into force from the 1st of June 2021. First, we'll have a look at Section 21 notices. So for those of you new to property, a Section 21 notice is a method or a tool that you can use to regain possession of your property. And this comes under the Housing Act, and it's a section in that Act which is where the name comes from. Now, prior to the coronavirus crisis, the notice period for issuing a Section 21 notice was 2 months. During the pandemic, it was gradually increased to 4 months and then latterly 6 months. The good news is that from 1st of June, the notice period has now gone back down to 4 months. Do remember that you can only issue a Section 21 notice at the end or after the end of a fixed term, which is also the same as during a periodic tenancy. For example, if you've issued a 6-month AST, you cannot issue the Section 21 notice prior to month 4 of that fixed term. You must also have made sure that you issue prescribed information in the correct manner before and at the start of the tenancy. And this is a subject of another topic in where we look in detail about this prescribed information, but it includes things, for example, like a valid EPC and a valid gas safety certificate, amongst other documents. One thing you do need to bear in mind is that if and when you are issuing a Section 21 notice to regain possession of your property, you must use the most up-to-date Form 6A. This is a form that can be found on the government website, and I would strongly recommend that each and every time you are looking to issue a Section 21 notice, go directly to the government website so that you know for certain that you are using the most up-to-date form. If you accidentally use an old form, you do run the risk that when you get to court, for example, if your tenant fails to leave and you have to go to court to enforce a notice and you have used the wrong form, your notice could be deemed invalid and you may have to start the process all over again. The other major tool that landlords have at their disposal to regain possession of their property is a Section 8 notice. Section 8 notices tend to be used for rent arrears. There are many other both mandatory and discretionary grounds. Mandatory is just that. If you issue a Section 8 notice and your tenant fails to leave and you go to court, the judge has to find in your favour. Whereas discretionary grounds is as it says, it is up to the judge's discretion. Therefore, when you are issuing a Section 8 notice, it is important to rely on mandatory grounds as far as possible. As I say, the most common reason I've seen a Section 8 notice used is for rent arrears. So there is a mandatory ground, which is ground 8. This means you need to wait until your tenant is 2 months or 8 weeks in arrears before you can issue a notice. You can also use discretionary grounds 10 and 11, which relates to infrequent or persistent late rent payments, and there is not a minimum term on this. Now, prior to the coronavirus crisis, the notice period for a Section 8 notice for ground 8 was 2 weeks. This was increased to 6 months during the crisis. You could see this had a major impact on many landlords. The good news is that from the 1st of June, this notice period has been reduced to 4 months. Now, if you are in the unfortunate position where you're facing rent arrears of more than 4 months, you can now give 4 weeks notice for a Section 8 using a Section 8 notice. So this means the tenant will have 4 weeks in order to leave the property. If they do not do so, you can then go to court to get that notice enforced. The government website also indicates that the notice period for Section 8 notices reduces from 4 months down to 2 months from the 1st of August. So it is looking like that gradually we will return to normal in terms of notice periods. Again, as I mentioned on Section 21 notices, there is a prescribed form that you need to use if you're issuing a Section 8 notice. For this notice, you need Form 3. Again, this is available on the government website, and I would recommend you go there each and every time that you need to issue this form. Now, I did mention earlier that Section 8 notices have various mandatory and discretionary grounds. There are some of these grounds have already returned to their pre-COVID notice periods. So, for example, the death of a tenant, serious antisocial behaviour. If you find that your tenant doesn't actually have a right to rent, then the notice period has returned to its previous level of 2 weeks. If a tenant is causing nuisance, annoyance or illegal or immoral use of the property, then eviction can be immediate upon serving that notice. If you do experience these unfortunate situations, you may decide that you want to use a specialist eviction solicitor in this case. There are several organisations and companies out there that can help you with this. They can deal with the paperwork, and if you need to go to court, they can help you with that as well. The other change that happened from the 1st of June, or the 31st of May to be more exact, was that these regulations expired. So these regulations were brought in last year before Christmas, and effectively meant that even if the court upheld your notice to regain possession of your property and the tenant still failed to leave, bailiffs couldn't go to the property and resecure it for you, so they couldn't make tenants leave. The process that you go through is you serve a notice. If the tenant fails to leave at that point, you go to court to get that notice enforced. If the tenant still fails to leave, you go back to court to request bailiffs, and bailiffs can go to the property and forcibly evict tenants. From the period from November 2020 up until the 31st of May, bailiffs were not allowed to do this step in the process. So as I say, even if you had been awarded possession of your property back, bailiffs were not allowed to go. These regulations have now expired on the 31st of May. Bailiffs do need to give tenants at least 14 days notice before they turn up, so it will be mid-May before bailiffs can start enforcing court orders. So that's a really brief summary of the major changes that have happened to legislation with regards to evictions and getting your property back where the tenant has breached their contract. I'll briefly leave you with our contact details. If you have any questions on this topic or any questions relating to property management in general, please do feel free to drop us an email at info@thepropertymanagementprogram.co.uk. We regularly post on our YouTube channel, PMP TV, updates such as this, and we have a Facebook group called Investors Circular, which you're more than welcome to join.